Sharkie Gamer here. So today we're taking a look at the Hori MotoGP bike handlebar controller. And this is for PlayStation 1 and 2. As you can see by the Japanese on the box, this is a controller from Japan. And this is the front of the box. And you can see a bit of a sneak peek of the controller just there. Of course, there's the Hori logo. And you've got some artwork on the box. PlayStation logo. And of course it says MotoGP down the bottom there. The side of the box is pretty much the same sort of thing. Same with the other side. And that's the top of the box. Again, it's got some artwork there. Shows the sneak peek at the controller. And on the back of the box, it's got a whole lot of information in Japanese. And then going in for a closer look there, it points out some features of the actual controller. Okay, so let's go ahead and open this up and have a closer look at this bike controller. So bear with me a moment while I just pull this out. It does have quite a bit of packaging. Okay, so this is it. So that's basically the front type of view. There's your side. That's what it looks basically from the back, or you could call it the front of the bike. That's the other side. So you can tell by this little thing here, it looks basically like a portion of a bike. It looks like a front of a bike, basically. Of course, you've got your handlebars, you've got a base, and this is like the trim. And it's meant to look like a bike. It's meant to look like it's a portion being pulled right off a bike. Now, the first thing, it looks cool, but this stuff here is really thin plastic. That's how flimsy it is. It's just really thin plastic. So it looks good and it looks fancy, but it's really kind of really cheap plastic that's really flimsy, really light. So it gives the good look, but it doesn't have the quality to match for this kind of overall kind of frame on it. Cable is your standard PlayStation plug, and it's got a fairly decent length on it. Now you can see it's set on this big wide base, and this base also has these little rubber feet on it, so it's not going to slide around. But this base is big enough that when you have it on a surface, this thing's not going to move easily. It's quite weighty. It's quite got a lot of plastic, so it's not going to move easily. Now, you can put this onto your lap. I have tried it on just sitting on my lap. You can work with it on your lap. The only problem I find is it's a bit too high. I personally find when I have it on my lap, it's a bit too high. I find it better if you place it on like a lower surface than what you're actually on. So say a coffee table, a smaller table, just something a bit lower than where you're sitting at. That way this sits on that table, won't move at all, and you can use it. The base is quite solid though, so you shouldn't have a problem with it shifting or anything like that. That is a solid, it's a really solid kind of plastic piece that. Okay, so steering is done by, first off, actually tilting the controller. So first off, you would think like a bike controller, it's got handlebars, you would turn it, but turning it like this does nothing. So this is just basically there just to give you a bit of movement, but actually turning this in-game does absolutely nothing. To actually turn right or left while you're playing with like a bike racing game or something, you've actually got to tilt the controller to the side. And you can tell it's this mechanism here, in the base there. You can just see it when you tilt. That is what is basically steering your bike. So when you're racing, you can still move this around, but you need to tilt to actually turn. But having said that, even though this doesn't do anything, it does give you a little bit of movement when you're actually tilting it. So it feels a bit more natural. Because if this was rigid, it would just feel like you're going like this, and it wouldn't feel as nice. So by having that little bit of movement, it does feel pretty nice when you're turning it. It does make quite a bit of noise when you're doing this, so you can hear that the bass system click when it hits. But otherwise, it works well on the steering front. You can steer your bike really nice and easily. Now, to accelerate your bike, you have the handle here, and this twists like this. So, of course, in the game, you just do this to accelerate. Just like you would do on a real bike. And this works quite nice. It actually feels a really nice mechanism, that. Really nice and smooth. And, of course, this front lever here is your brake. So again, you can accelerate, and then you can grab this to brake. And even though in actually playing the game, this feels alright, the lever itself does feel a little bit more cheaper plastic than, say, this handle. It doesn't feel as nice, but the actual movement of it works well in the game. The other lever on the other side also feels the same type of level of quality as this one. But it doesn't actually, it's not like an analog lever like these are. It actually has two functions. So if you turn it back like that, it's R1. If you go this way, it's L1. So R1, L1. So it's actually just acting like two buttons. Forward and back. But it feels just as cheap plastic on that lever as the other lever did. And of course this handle does nothing. Moving in to the center here. First off, you've got a really tiny D-pad, and by tiny, I mean really tiny, as you can see. Really small. It does do the job in case you need a D-pad though, so it is there in case you need it. The next buttons here, you got triangle and you got L1. Moving over the side here, you've got X, circle, select, and start. And all these basically 6 buttons here feel alright. They press down nice and easily, so they feel fine to use. In the center here you have a mode button, and up the top here you have basically a switch that switches between normal and analog. And basically what normal is, it's like a digital mode. So if you have it in analog, the accelerate and the brake will actually act as analog, so you'll get really nice movement, really nice like analog movement in the game. If you have it to normal, then these will basically act just like a button press, so they'll act almost like digital. So it'll act like one button and one button, so it won't give you as smooth a performance or as nicer experience in the game, but it is there in case you're playing a game that doesn't support analog, or you need basically the standard digital kind of version of it for some other reason. So it's there in case you need to switch it. So overall, it looks pretty cool. It works well. And I mean, looking at it, it really does look pretty cool. So it looks pretty cool. And I mean, it does work well. You play a game, you're accelerating like this, you're braking, and of course you're turning it right and left like this. So it gives you a more realistic experience while playing a bike racing game, and making you feel like you are actually racing with a bike. So you actually have handlebars in your hands, and you're accelerating and braking just like you would do on a bike. And it does work really well. Works with all types of bike racing games and everything like that. PlayStation 1 and 2. So it works very well. It is a bit tiny in terms of the handlebars. They're a bit more small than some of the other handlebar controllers I have. But overall, the whole unit and the fact how tall it is, it's actually taller than some of the other handlebars I have. Just because it's got a huge base on it. Now, like I mentioned before, it does look pretty cool, but when you actually are using in that, you don't tend to notice it too much until you actually hit some of these plastic parts. Like, I feel this trim, even though it looks cool, they could have done it a little bit of better quality, just to make it a bit more firmer, so you feel like it's actually, you know, a crucial part of the control that makes it look nice and everything. Because at the moment, it feels so flimsy that it feels like it makes the controller feel so much more cheaper. Another thing, these handles, these levers, the brake as well as this one which acts as 2 buttons, they don't, like I say, they don't feel that nice. They are, like this one feels alright when you're braking, there's no problem there, but feeling them, they're not as good quality as the actual main unit here. It feels like it's slightly cheaper quality. I don't know why, but that's just my impression when I actually first used this. I felt that those just felt a bit cheaper. So overall, when you're using it, it looks cool, it just feels a bit cheaper. So it gives you that cheapened feeling, and compared to some other bike controllers I've got. Because I've got quite a few bike handlebars, and this one just feels a lot more cheaper than those ones. The quality is just way down in comparison to them. Now this is quite a rare item from Japan. You don't see it that often. Another controller from Hori. Very rare to find. When you see it though, it doesn't go too high, so when you do see one, you can usually pick them up pretty cheap. They're usually around the $30 or $40 mark, so they don't usually go too high. It's just finding one, that's the hardest part. So with this actually using it and playing this with games, I would only really recommend this to collectors. As, like I said before, I've got plenty of other type of bike handlebar controllers, and I would easily recommend those over this one, just because those feel like better quality, and they feel better to play a game with. Although, having said that, like I said, it does look pretty cool, and I have to admit that playing with this thing is still better than playing with a gamepad, because, I mean, when you think of it, a bike racing game, you want to play with a handlebar, you want to make it a bit more realistic feeling. You don't want to play with a gamepad that has 2 analog sticks, you don't really want to play with a racing wheel, because you don't have a racing wheel on a bike. You want to play with handlebars. You want to have a bike racing controller for a bike racing game, and this does exactly that. So even though it's not as good quality as some of the other racing, the bike handlebar controllers I've got, it's still, I would still recommend using this thing over using a gamepad any day. And I mean, it still looks pretty cool, and it's ideal for collectors, especially if you're a fan of bike racing controllers or bike racing games. And it's pretty fun to play a bike racing game and steer it with handlebars. It just gives you more of a realistic experience, I find. I enjoy it way more of using a handlebar controller than using something else. So you guys, that was the Hori MotoGP bike handlebar controller for PlayStation 1 and 2. So pretty cool little thing, and like I said, it's pretty rare. But just the quality, plasticky kind of quality, brings it down a bit. But you guys, thanks for watching. I am Sharkie Gamer. Don't forget to subscribe. I'll have heaps more gaming controller and accessory videos up very shortly. Feel free to comment down below, and if you like this video, hit that like button. Really helps out a lot, guys. Thanks for watching.